Hey there, my name is Crystal. Welcome to our channel. I'm in my kitchen today because I'm going to be canning up some pumpkin. We love growing pumpkins here, and I've had some here in the house that were starting to go bad, and so I threw those to the chickens, and we have some left over. I want to get them canned up and in our pantry. I'm going to be using our Presto pressure canner. It comes with the instruction manual in it, and I talked about this in one of the last videos. But it's really important to save this because it's full of all kinds of useful information on canning and maintenance on your pressure canner and things like that. If you do buy a pressure canner and it comes with a manual like this, to please save it because it's really important and it's good reference. We're using this book here. I need to get a new one because the pages are falling out. I've had it for a long time and it's just falling apart. A pumpkin or winter squash recipe on page 395, and it's in the low acid section of the book. So they go into the process of talking about preserving low acid foods on page 382, and then you can go to the section of vegetables or meat or soup or whatever it is that you're canning, and it will tell you the steps, the brief steps on how to do that. But all the details are in the beginning part of that section. If you don't have this book and you're interested in buying it, please check out our Amazon storefront. Otherwise, I'm going to show you how I do it here. Now, normally with pumpkin, I cut them up and I'll get all the seeds out, and then I'll coat them in olive oil, maybe a little bit of salt. I'll put them flesh side down on a cookie sheet so that the skin is up, and I roast it for a little while until it's brown, and then the skin peels right off and it is perfect. And you puree it up and you can turn it into bread or muffins or pasta sauce or whatever you do with it. It's so good and I love it, but these were starting to go bad and they do take up a lot of space in our kitchen, so I want to get them canned up and put away in the pantry. Last night I ended up peeling them by hand, which was really not that tedious. It's just cutting them like normal. I used a serrated bread knife because the pumpkins can get kind of slippery. I used a serrated knife so I had some more stability when I was cutting it. And you just want to be really careful because the pumpkins do get very slippery when you're doing that. And then I just peeled them by hand, and it really wasn't that difficult. The one that was difficult was the one pumpkin that I had left over from the store. It was a little bit harder to peel, so I just cut it into chunks and then was able to peel it that way, and it made it much easier. Here is how the pumpkin looks. I'm gonna get these cut up a little bit more, rinsed off again, and those will be ready to process. So the only things you need for this recipe are the pumpkin and boiling water. So we're going to be boiling the pumpkin. We're not going to cook it all the way till it's soft. We're just going to be cooking it for a little bit in the boiling water, about 2 minutes or so. And then you need a pot of boiling water off to the side that you're going to be ladling into the jars. The canning jars that we're using are the wide mouth quart size jars. I have the wide mouth replacement lids here. All we're going to be doing is washing these with a little bit of dish soap, some hot tap water, shaking them around a little bit, letting them sit, and then rinsing them off really well. And that's it. You don't need to boil lids anymore. So just like with all of our other reference videos, if you need to just jump to a certain section and you are looking for just a little bit of information about something, you can go down into the description, and underneath chapters I have the timestamps, and you're able to click on the little link and it will bring you right to that section in the video, and you don't have to weed through the whole video trying to find putting lids on jars or whatever it is that you might be looking for. Otherwise, if you are here for the whole video, thank you so much. We really do appreciate you. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you are not subscribed. I really appreciate you being here, and with that, we'll get started with the video.
In addition to the saucepans and the pressure canner, these are the supplies that I'm using: a canning funnel, jar grippers, ladle, bubble tool that measures headspace, box of wide mouth lids, wide mouth bands, wide mouth quart size jars, distilled white vinegar, lint-free cloth for cleaning the rims, and a folded bath towel for the countertop. After placing the canning rack on the bottom of the canner, I'm going to fill the pressure canner with 3 quarts of water. The canning rack is important because it prevents the jars from sitting directly on the bottom of the canner, which can cause the jars to clank around and possibly break them during the canning process. We have well water, so to prevent any staining on the jars, I am also adding 2 tablespoons of distilled white vinegar to the canner.
So this is our pressure canner lid. We have a Presto pressure canner. This here is the gauge. This is where you're going to tell how many pounds of pressure are inside of the pressure canner. And then when the canner is under pressure, this lock button will come up. And when the pressure has fallen, it will drop. And that just lets you know whether it's safe or not to open. Underneath, we have the seal, and you just want to go through and make sure that the seal is good. This is the vent pipe, and then this is the pressure regulator. And that regulates the pressure inside of the canner. And then this is the vent pipe here, and you can hold it up to a light, and as long as you can see through it, then it is clear. If it's not clear, then you would want to clean that out. You just want to make sure that all the components on the lid of the pressure canner are free to function as they are supposed to. And then the other thing I don't think I've ever talked about is this is the safety seal. So this will pop and blow off. If the canner gets under a dangerous level of pressure, then this will pop off to vent steam. So it's just a safety measure there, but this you won't need to do anything with this. Next thing we're gonna do is get our jars preheated. I'm just gonna be placing these in the canner.
I'm just preheating the jars in the pressure canner. I'm not tightening down the lid, I'm just placing the cover on lightly and turning the burner on a low simmer. In the larger sauce pot that I have, I'm adding several quarts of filtered water. This water will be brought up to a boil to pour over the pumpkin in the jars. Now I'm cutting up the pumpkin into roughly 1-inch cubes. Next, I'm going to rinse off the pumpkin and add them to our large stock pot with hot water to boil for 2 minutes. You just want to heat the pumpkin through without getting too soft. You don't want it mushy or to even be able to puncture it too much with a fork. We're just heating the pumpkin through slightly. After the 2 minutes, drain the liquid. Fill each jar with the pumpkin. boiling water that we have reserved to the side, cover the pumpkin and fill the jars to within an inch of headspace. The headspace is the distance between the contents of the jar and the top. Using the bubble tool, remove all of the bubbles between the pumpkin. The water level will most likely appear to go down with this step because it's filling in the gaps of air that were in the jar. More boiling water will need to be added. Remove the bubbles again and repeat the process as needed until the jar is full of water up to the 1-inch headspace. Once the jars are full, we need to clean the rims. Using distilled white vinegar and a lint-free cloth, wipe down each rim so that there is nothing in the way of the lids sealing to the jars. What I use is either an old t-shirt or a flour sack towel, something that doesn't produce lint. I don't really recommend using dish towels, microfiber cloths, or paper towels because those sometimes leave either dust or lint or little paper fibers behind that will prevent the lids from sealing to the jar. When the rims are clean, center the lids in the jars. With the tips of your fingers, tighten the bands down finger tight. This means tightening the band until resistance is met and then tightening a little bit more. It's not necessary to tighten it any more than that. I double check that there is the correct amount of water inside the canner and then add the jars. Tighten the lid down without the regulator. Turn the burner up and wait for steam to exit the vent pipe. Once there's a steady flow of steam, set the timer for 10 minutes. During this time, you will see the block button pop up. After 10 minutes, place the pressure regulator on the vent pipe. Once the pressure regulator is on, now we're going to wait for the pressure to get up to the necessary pressure that we need. The recipe calls for 10 pounds of pressure, but where we live, our elevation, we need about 11 pounds of pressure. I'm waiting for the pressure gauge to reach that 11 pounds of pressure, and during this time, I'm adjusting the burner, so speeding it up and slowing it down depending on what I need. As the pressure gauge starts to approach the 11 pounds of pressure, I slow the burner down a little bit and I turn it down so that it slowly starts to approach that 11 pounds. And once it's there, I have to keep an eye on it to make sure that it stays at the 11 pounds of pressure during the processing time. Process quart-sized jars for 90 minutes. If the pressure happens to fall below the necessary pressure that you need to get it back up to pressure and then restart your timer. After the 90 minutes, turn everything off and allow the pressure to drop to 0 naturally. I do move the canner off the hot burner and just leave it alone for a while. So the lock button has fallen and the pressure gauge is down to 0, and we can safely remove the pressure regulator. Twist the lid open. Make sure it's
put it away from your face so the steam doesn't hit you. And that is how those look. The next step for these, they will sit on the counter until tomorrow, and I will remove the bands from each of the jars, check the lids to make sure that the popper thing is down, and give the lids a little bit of a shake test just to make sure that they're sealed good to the jar. I will label them and put them in our pantry. That'll do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to give this video a thumbs up. We really do appreciate you so much, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!